Hey guys, this is Hetu and welcome back to etlqalabs. Hope you all are doing great and you are making good learning and you are progressing in your life, right? So today we will take up a very important topic that is related to real time or practical experience based questions. And nowadays I think the industry's focus is to find out the people who have really worked on are people having the hands-on experience, right? So the trend is a bit shifting now because they really want to know that you really have worked on or you have not worked, right? So you can answer the SQL queries, any sort of queries on the SQL or Linux or all those kind of things without having any, uh, practical knowledge or without having any project knowledge or without having any real-time experience on the project, right? You can easily answer them. So for them, how do they identify whether you really have a good, real-time experience, or let's say you have a experience in software industry but may not be in the ETL field, right? So how do they actually find out you? So the best thing is to ask the practical questions, how the real time setup happens in the industry, or for example any good, big project, right? Good project, right? So these are the few of the questions which are helpful for them to eliminate the candidate based on their real experience, right? So I will try to take up few questions and probably we can take up some questions in the later videos. Sorry, guys. So we can take up some of the questions for now. And first questions in the row is basically they are actually focusing what is end-to-end ETL framework, right? Framework of your project, right? So, to answer this question, I think it's very important that we understand end-to-end framework and what is the purpose of ETL. Building a ETL project or ETL framework, what is the whole purpose of it, right? So, how do you approach these questions, guys, right? This type of question, right? So, all right. So let's take up question one by one. So, first question is this. Let's focus on this first. So, to answer this question, um, in any ETL project, we have three major component, right? One is source, which is outside your ETL, and then you have the ETL, and then you have a target, right? Target can be database, right? Or database, I would say data warehouse, right? Data warehouse is nothing but a kind of database itself, right? Or maybe it can be a file based, right? But majority of the time the ETL job is supposed to have the data in target as a data warehouse because that is the whole purpose of ETL, to keep loading the data for years and years and and do the analysis based on that. So this is only applicable when so data warehousing. So there are two. I will just say here, probably it's a data warehouse. Guys, just try to understand what I'm talking here, right? So this is one of the flow, right? And this particular flow is true for data warehousing projects. All right. So what is the purpose of data warehousing projects is basically when you need to store the data on a continuous basis for a quite long period of time, and that can be one of the requirement for you to maintain the data. For example, let's say I have a bank, and bank is by default uh, I think uh, I think 10 or 20 years they are mandated to keep the data for any customer, right? So they have to keep the data as per RBI regulation, I think in India, or maybe in the central by different central banks, there is some mandatory, uh, you know, retention period for the bank to keep the data. So as per regulations, they have to keep the data for certain years, right? In that case, what they can do, there are daily transactions which are happening, and then on those daily transactions, they have to keep this data into data warehouse, isn't it? So that your data warehouse can keep updated with the data, and it will have let's say 10 years data, and after that they can start archiving the data after 10 years, right? The older data than 10 years, they can actually start archiving it, but they have to keep this 10 years of data, let's say, for example, right? And for health industry, there is some different regulations that they have to follow, right, as per business protocol, or the business, not protocol, I will say, but business requirement, isn't it? So in that case, it's very important that they have to keep all this data, and there will be ETL jobs that they have to design, which will basically pull the data from this source, and it at the end of the day, and I mean basically these ETL jobs, basically these are designed to run. ETL runs during non-business hour. Why? Because during business hour, this source is always busy. So what is this source for ETL? This source is basically the, let's say, OLTP system, okay, or I can say transactional system also. All right, all right. So this is the source basically for this ETL data warehouse. So non-business hour, right? Non-business hours. Probably end of day, right? End of day runs. So this is the whole purpose, and this data actually keep sitting, keep accumulated into target, which is the data warehouse, and and in so this is one of the purpose. Okay, let's not go much detail into that, but this is one of the purpose, right? And here so I want to tell here is basically the target is always data warehouse, because we have to keep somewhere in database, right? So database, when I say data warehouse, it's essentially a database itself, right? Okay, which can store large amount of data, right? Now, second type of ETL that you can build is basically you can have the source, okay, and then you have ETL here, and then you also can have source target, and target can be, guys, target can be here, let's say, file based, right? In this case, what happens? Let's say in typical in typical business setup, if I can give you example, what happens? This kind of systems are. Let's say I have mm, I'm a trading company. Let's say, right? I'm a bank, probably. Let's say I'm a bank. For example, I'm a bank, ABC Bank. All right, ABC Bank. And the bank job is to basically uh, bank is having some trading, right? Trading services they provide. Now what they do is they have to make sure that they have the latest reference data for the trading, right? So that they can populate all those details on their trading website for the trading. So for example, if there is a stock which is listed, stock listed yesterday, right? Yesterday, and that particular stock should be available on their website for today's trading, right? For today's trading. In that case, what they have to do, they have to make sure that the this stock list file should be available to them every day, and they have to make sure they load this particular file, right? This particular file should be loaded, and where this stock listed file will be coming. Let's say there are various vendors in the market. So for example, let's say we have Bloomberg. Bloomberg is one of and Reuters. These are some of the vendors basically, or some of the data, static data, or various kind of data suppliers in the market. And as a bank ABC, they have to actually take some sort of subscription from Bloomberg and Reuters for the daily file. So they will be asking this file, and what as part of this setup, what Bloomberg is going to do, Bloomberg is going to run a ETL job. I mean, that is already set up this kind of ETL job, which will basically process this file and send this a file-based system to the ABC Bank. So ABC Bank will receive this file and process into their system, and then this particular newly listed stock is available for banks customer to trade, right? So hope you get this idea, right? So this kind of setup will have some target where you actually provide the extract, right? So extract, when you need to provide some extract, in that case you have to provide some file based target. And this is not the data warehousing project. This is purely only ETL based project. But here this is using ETL, but this is a completely data warehousing project, right? Here we don't do any analysis. It's just that we just get the data, right? For one day, tomorrow I'll get a different file, next day different file, right? And this file will is of no use because this is already outdated, right? So hope you get some idea, right? So this is the typical setup. So what I wanted to I wanted to tell you here is basically we have this setup, right? Framework, right? So framework can be, you can just say that you have already source, and source can be anything. It can be file-based system. It can be database. It can be any other kind of source system. And from source system we get from source we just pull the data using the ETL job, and then ETL is actually populating the data into target, right? So this is what the flow that you can tell them, right? Now the question can be, what is your source system? How do you validate? So as part of your ETL tester, do you basically, so this is, you can explain this, okay, first, and then you can actually go through little bit more details about it, like what is ETL. So in case of ETL, you also need to know little bit about Informatica, because you have to cover at least one tool, right? So you should know what is Informatica, what is different component of Informatica, various transformation, active transformation, passive transformations, and also various different type of transformation. I have made detailed video about it on the Informatica section. Just go there on the channel, right? So you can actually find out more details on the Informatica as a ETL tool, right? You need to know one tool basically as a ETL tester as well. They expect you to know, right? Because if you know the concept of one tool, all the ETL tools will have the same structure and same kind of working or functionality. So it's important that you know that, right? So ETL, you can just learn the Informatica, right? So you can, if you know Informatica, then you are very confident to answer this. That this is the ETL flow. And then target, you can talk about, if you are very good about data warehousing. Again, for data warehousing, I have done some video. Just go and check out there in the section, data warehousing section. But they expect as a ETL tester, you should also know the data warehousing concepts, right? So if you tell this particular flow, I think this is the best flow that they expect, right? Any interviewer will expect you. This is also okay kind of flow, because actually you are not talking about data warehousing here, because you are completely missing here, because you don't have data warehousing in picture here. It's just a file based extract that you are sending it here. But here they will definitely ask you about Informatica, because Informatica is common here, right? In the middle layer, right? So, but I would recommend that you learn this data warehousing concept, then Informatica, and then. But this is the flow. You can tell either of these two flow wherever you feel the comfortable, right? And these are the uh, two I would say um, good flow that you can choose out of anything. There can be some other flow as well, guys, but I'm just telling you the main, right? So this is the one you can actually tell them. Now they can ask you then, tell me about okay, about test responsibility, right? Test responsibilities. Your testing responsibilities you have to tell, right? So what you can explain here, guys? Normally, they try to check you whether you really have worked or not, right? So they can ask you, what are the different environments that do you have, and how you are involved into testing, etc. So you have to tell them that you are actually involved in the project since the beginning of the inception of this project, and you are very much part of team, and you always work together with developer and try to make sure that you also understand the logic of various transformations, various mapping, and how they are designing the mapping, etc. Right? So it's important that you tell your responsibility, and then you say that once we understand the requirement, we try to write the test cases, right? I can say that test case writing. Then what you do, normal, right? So test case writing is basically done based on mapping document, right? Mapping or data lineage document. I have already covered all these guys before, but I'm just trying to tell you, refresh your mind here, right? Okay. So data lineage sheet, based on this you write the test cases, various test cases, positive, negative, etc. Right? And what all the things you do as part of this is, and then once you write it, you just guess, basically get it validated, right? So you have to actually validate with team. Okay, various team, dev team, and also BA is involved, BA team, etc. You have to just get it involved. That in terms of coverage, you are good, right? So coverage, ensure, right? You need to ensure that you are covering all the critical cases or all the important cases, right? So that's very important. Second, when it comes to execution, they can also ask you, so how do you make sure that you have okay, so they can ask you, where do you test all these things, right? So you have, typically we have in the software industry, we have multiple environments, right? So developer will have their dev environment, right? That is separate environment. And then QA or tester will have QA or test environment, right? They also call it SIT environment, system integration testing environment. There are various names, but don't go into that. But it's more important to understand there are a separate environment. When I say environment, it means that there is a separate instance and separate tables, etc. For example, environment. I'll go a little more deeper about it. The environment from the ETL point of view, what does it mean, right? But just know that. And then you have prod environment, right? You also have pre-prod environment, guys. Okay, pre-prod environment, and then you have finally prod environment. And this pre-prod and prod is basically it's not for QA or not for even developer. I think this the prod environment is mostly used, and this is pre-prod mostly for UAT testing something. They also called it UAT. I mean, there are names interchangeably, you can use it. But yes, and the prod environment is purely for the production support engineers, right? Production, productionization or production basically. All right, production support engineers. All right. Now, when I say environment, right? ETL environment, it means environments. It means you have a database, right? So database access, right? Database access for you, it will be test instance, right? Test database instance, okay? Separate instance. For developer, there will be development environment, right? For them. So it will be a separate database for you where you are actually going to test, right? You will be connected to. So all this environment has to be prepared by the management team or whoever is taking care of it, right? How it is designed basically. All right, database. Then you have the ETL or Informatica, I would say. I will say Informatica when I say ETL, right? So Informatica or ETL repository. Okay, so you will get a separate repository created for the testing, and that's where the developer, once developer is done with the job and testing, unit testing is done by them, they will promote the job into test repository. All right, test repository. this place, and this particular test repository will populate and this database, test database, this will be connected together, right? So whenever you do something here, it will be reflected here, for example. And also you will be having okay, if there are any other things, for example Linux, isn't it? For you have let's say some file based systems, for example your source system is file, or maybe in this case here you see file based system, right? Your extract is going to some server, etc. In that case you have the Linux, right? So if you want to check how is my file extract is generated out of ETL, then actually you can log into this Linux box and you can check that file, right? So these are the some of the environment, and then all of this environment will be separate from your developer and development environment. So this together makes environment. I mean there could be various other tools as well, right? And they are connected to that. But the important thing is this is the set of tools particularly available for a team uh, called test team is environment for the test environment and called a test environment, similarly for developer and then fraud also, right? So hope you get some idea here, right? So that you have the separate environment everything, and it will not impact any other people because of your testing, etc. All right. Okay, so hope you get some idea about the environment. Now coming back to that, right? So they can ask you also, so how do you start your testing, right? So to start your testing, we need to actually run the job. So guys, another thing to note here is in all the companies, we don't have this privilege to have all this dedicated environment for QA. Sometime development and QA environment is shared, guys. Okay. In that case, most of the time developer will be actually running the job for you, and the data will be loaded in the database, and that database, so for example you have, let's say, dev environment, right? You have ETL job or Informatica job, all right, Linux box, okay, and then you have database, for example, and all these are in a dev environment itself, which means the same two teams are sharing. Now development has done the job, and they can say that okay, you can actually we will since they are using the same environment, they will not let you run the job because you accidentally accidentally if something is done by you, because this is dev environment, and that can be problem for them because they might be doing some other development on some other jobs, etc., right? So that's the reason they will try to restrict you not to run the jobs. They will say that okay, they will give you the read only permission on the database as well, right? Because you can also manipulate, if you have all the permissions, you can also manipulate some databases, etc., right? Similarly, Linux box will be given as a read-only permission to check the extract, etc. You can check everything, but here the problem is you will not be able to test it fully. For example, if you need to test some negative testing, right? In the negative testing, you need to actually go and tamper the source system, right? Source, which means, let's say you have a source that is coming from a database, right? In that case, you can't actually go log in into database and modify the data and then run it again, right? You can't do all those things. So in that case, your testing is you can't really certify all the negative test cases, and you are a bit of challenged with regards to covering the entire aspect of the testing, right? So there can be scenarios. It's not that you will be all those things has to be properly documented into test strategy document and test plan or test strategy documents, right? We have to put all this limitation, right? Should document any challenge, okay, or limitations. Otherwise, people should not come tomorrow and blame you that you have not done this testing, that testing. So this should clearly be mentioned in the test strategy document. Okay, this is what we are going to do and this is what we are not going to do, right? All those things you have to tell if you are using a shared environment. If you have a separate environment, you have full access for a test environment, right? So you can do any kind of testing that you would like to do. In that case, you will have to write more and more test cases. You have to do spend more and more time in testing, running the ETL jobs, etc. So you actually know you will have more and more exposure if you have the dedicated environment for you, right? So there could be two scenarios, right? So it's not always that they will sometime ask you, do you have a separate environment or you are using a shared based environment? So based on that, you can answer basically, right? So what you have in your projects basically. So that is how you can do it, right? Now, guys, third thing is after this, right? What we do after testing, uh, you actually write the test cases, you execute the test cases, and then you actually say that okay, the test cases are passing and we are good with that. And then the next step happen is actually production, right? Production, right? So in the production, what we do is basically all this the test completion report is sent, right? And then the jobs which you tested, jobs are released to production environment. Okay, production environment, and once they are released to production environment, they are actually monitored by going forward, monitored monitored by production support engineers. Okay, production support engineers job is to basically make sure that the job that is released is actually successfully running on automated basis or not, right? So second thing I would tell you how these jobs are actually running on the daily basis. Now one more question the interviewer can ask you, right? Are you going to test any kind of scheduling tools, etc., or not, right? So here you can safely say that we do not test any scheduling tool, etc., because this particular scheduling is done only in production, because when they deploy the job they will run the autosys they will set up the autosys jobs, etc., right? So that you can say, right? But they can ask you how do they work, etc., do you have any idea? So you can just say that, okay? Because in production you are not so in testing we actually kick it off, right? We actually run it and we test it, but in production it is supposed to the ETL job supposed to run, let's say, every day, every Monday to Friday. Okay, let's say 9 a.m. IST. Okay, 9 p.m. IST probably, right? End of day. Let's say it is this ETL job is basically for India market. Okay. NSC and BSc probably. Okay, this basically loads data. I'm just taking example, guys. So ETL jobs can be of any nature, right? It's not necessarily that it need to be stock related or something, but I'm just taking example, right? Let's say the example that I have showed you here, right? The listed stock, right? In this case, let's say Bloomberg is sending the file every, let's say 8:30 p.m., right? 8:30 p.m. Bloomberg agreed that it will send the file by 8:30 max to this particular ABC bank, and now ABC bank will actually set up the job to trigger it at 9 p.m. from its side, just to make sure that the file is already arrived, and then it will kick out. So 9 p.m. IST, it will have one job setup, right? When I say job setup, scheduler, right? Scheduler. A scheduler can be many, right? Like there is very popular one, Autosys. Then you have Control M's, and then you also have um, Crons, right? They are some of the autosys basically, right? Informatica, in fact, also provide scheduler, right, in the job monitor, right? You can also do there, but we normally don't use it. We use external. Normally in the production, we use the external scheduler, right? So in this case, let's say this is the autosys, and autosys is a tool that basically uh, going to set up this. So let's say I have ETL job, I have Informatica Infa. Okay, I have just let's say I have made Infa NSC, or I can just say NSC name, right? ETL job name, something like that. Let's say I have made renamed it NSC ref load. Okay, means NSC reference data load if I want to do it, right? So this is the Informatica job name. Now I will have one autosys job name, autosys job name, and this particular job name, let's say NSC 9 p.m. something like this. I just giving some name, meaningful name, right? You have to give some meaningful name, and within this particular, we have to configure this particular job there, right? This has to be configured. So what will happen is this is the Informatica job. Now this autosys job is basically triggering every. So this particular job will have this one. Let's say ETL job name, and then it will say start time 9 p.m. days. It will say Monday to Friday, something like this. All this configuration will be given in this particular autosys job, and this can be done on in case of autosys you can actually very well do in Linux box, right? And this configuration can be there, and this job can be, this is just a autosys job, or you can also say it is a you know uh, you can say that it's a shell script job, right? That will basically trigger automatically, and it will make sure 9 p.m. it will start, right? And it will make sure it is completed, and it will run this job, and after successfully this particular job is run, this particular job will be turned to green, right? If it is not green, then it will also end failure. It will also have something like failure sent to. If it is failed, then it will send some email out to the production support engineers, right? If it is pass, nothing will happen. Probably we don't want to get any notification for pass, but if something is failed, then it will send one alert or some email out to this production support engineers on their mailbox, right? And then people can actually check why this is failing, etc., right? And they can take action. So this is how actually production support is running. Okay, just to give you some flavor. Maybe if you are more interested, I can do some more video on the production support, how the those engineers take care of these jobs, and if there is failure, what is turnaround time, how stressful their job is, what is the skill that is needed for them to handle. Obviously, production support engineers are supposed to be very, very proactive, and they are the one who are actually on the run side of the business. Correct? You are from the change side of the business, but they are actually run side of the business, right? So let's not prolong this video, guys, I think. And these are the few things that I wanted to tell you. Okay, and hopefully this will be helpful for you, right? To answer some of the questions that you might have encountered in the interviews. But probably I will be doing some more videos just to help you answer this sort of questions, because these are real-time questions, and if you don't have exposure, I think you will not be able to answer this kind of questions until you take a look at this kind of question that I'm answering here, right? and you can very well relate even if you have worked on something, and you might have heard here and there, but you never have the hands-on experience, you will not be able to answer, guys, right? But now since I have explained it here, you can make some sort of dot connection here and there, right? And then you can actually make some good amount of, good amount of efforts to answer these questions. Okay. All right, guys. I think this is, I think first video that I tried to do it. Okay. Maybe probably we'll do some more. But do let me know in the comment section if you this is interesting to you, and also share with me the questions so that I can. So you share me the real-time questions, guys, what they are asking, and then how did you answer, or maybe any success story, or if you also have some good things happening in your life, just share with me, and that will motivate others also, other learner here, right? So yes, I think this is good. And guys, thank you for your time, and I hope that this is helpful for you. And until we meet next time, happy learning. God bless you. Bye.